I've believed Nelson Mandela to be a Freemason for many years, but there has not been any proof until now. DTW has written the following articles on Nelson Mandela where he stated at a function that Maitreya, the Christ, visited him when he was still in prison on Robben Island. See article where he is quite happy to be compared to Jesus Christ in a Last Supper painting. Mandela as Jesus Christ, and here again where the ANC compares Madiba to Jesus Christ. Stop comparing Mandela to Jesus, or where they liken him to Moses who led the Israelites out of Egypt, a comparison to leading the blacks out of apartheid here. ANC likens Madiba to Moses. Artist Dean Simon, appointed in 1988 as an official war artist, was commissioned to produce the piece by a Johannesburg businessman who wants to remain anonymous. It is a contemporary version of, arguably, one of the most recognizable images in the world, Leonardo da Vinci's fresco, The Last Supper. The original 1498 fresco depicts Jesus and his disciples seated around a table on the eve of his betrayal by Judas. The local, secular version of the image replaces the figures from the New Testament with 12 figures identified as iconic individuals in the fight against inequality and oppression who dedicated their lives to the abolition of apartheid. The 13th figure, Judas, remains anonymous in the contemporary painting and is signified by a white shape, supposedly allowing viewers to draw their own conclusions about who it could be. The ANC was paid tribute to former President Nelson Mandela, likening him to Moses, who rescued the Israelites. Madiba is like the biblical Moses, who took the children of Israel from the land of bondage to the Promised Land, the land of milk and honey, spokesperson Jackson Mthembu said in a statement. We salute his leadership and his selflessness. Mthembu urged South Africans and the world to dedicate 67 minutes of their time to those less fortunate to celebrate Mandela's birthday. To learn the true meaning of the 67 minutes, watch my other video, Fake Madiba Theory, Why Chris Hani Was Killed. But to the issue at hand, was Nelson Mandela a Freemason? He was part of the elders set up by Richard Branson, Freemason, and Peter Gabriel, Freemason. The Elders is an unusual organization with a distinct way of working. The Elders work strategically, focusing on areas where they are uniquely placed to make a difference. This can mean engaging in private advocacy, using their collective influence to open doors and gain access to decision-makers. At other times, the Elders work publicly to promote neglected issues and speak out against injustice. The group decides collectively where there is the greatest opportunity to make a real impact. The Elders are supported by a small teams based in London and by the advisory councils. Freemasons are known to give hand signals when they are taking photos or greeting others to let other Freemasons know that they are one of them. This picture was taken from Modern Maturity magazine in 2004. An entire page was dedicated to this photo of Nelson Mandela. The magazine is published by AARP, who is run by radical leftists. Mandela joyfully shows his hands in the position of a double V. This is based on the Hebrew letter Shin and supposedly invokes Kabbalistic magic. It is reported that Mandela became a Freemason in 1994. The Rothschilds and the Oppenheimers, all Freemasons running the scenes to establish a new world order along with other so-called black nobility families, who were the orchestrators of the fall of apartheid and are the ones who still actually run what goes on behind the scene in South Africa today. So there is a third force, if you want to call it that, who is controlling what happens to this country. The Knights of Malta is a Freemason order for anyone of notability, from politicians right down to our so-called Christian clergy. See article here of Apostle Rick Joyner from Morningstar Ministers, who is happy to flash about his Masonic Knight of Malta robes. There are now two bodies, one Catholic and the other Protestant, but each repudiates the other. The degree of Knights of Malta is conferred in the United States as an appendant order in a commandery of Knights Templar. There is a ritual attached to the degree, but very few are in possession of it, and it is generally communicated after the candidate has been created a Knights Templar. Nelson Mandela was not the only one from South Africa who was knighted. Freemason, Thabo Mbeki too was knighted. But who would have guessed that Desmond Tutu was a Freemason as well? Desmond Tutu is also part of the Elders. But South Africa has history with Freemasonry even before democracy.
Hidden in a remote corner stands a quaint national monument, the Lodge de Goede Hoop. Inside, a temple reflecting the exact dimensions of the inner sanctum of King Solomon's temple. But what's the link to Parliament?
Representative government in South Africa was actually initiated, amongst others, by a lot of prominent Freemasons like Sir Christoffel Brandt and Cecil John Rhodes and many others who later played a big role in the history of our country.
Nestled between the lodge and Teenhuis is another building first owned by the Freemasons. This building, the Good Hope Chambers, not only housed the first representative government at the Cape, but it would later become the venue where the final draft of our democratic constitution would be negotiated. This and all the adjacent land houses our parliament, thanks to the group still meeting inside the lodge. Rich in symbolism, it reflects the pillars of wisdom, strength and beauty, and the tools of its forebearers, the stonemasons. Their somewhat shady reputation locally, the Masons believe, came from their fierce rivalry with the Broederbond. They insist their teachings are aimed at liberty and equality for all and creating honorable men.
Be teaching them some of the fundamental principles of how you should behave ethically, how you should apply your morality. We would encourage their family values. We would encourage their activities within their communities.
And they hope to maintain the good relations with Parliament for another 200 years, considering their generosity when they sold Parliament the land for 1.6 sterling in 1854. That's about 150 rand today.
And now we know. Solid proof that Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, and our ever more famous Archbishop Desmond Tutu are Freemasons who worship Lucifer as their god.